Because like I'm saying, the divine, the source lies really all within us because again, we are all extensions of source. So when you actually get quiet and you get still and you listen, you can finally hear what the divine is trying to communicate to you, or you can finally even just start by feeling your life force. Welcome to the Livfiit Listens podcast, a safe space of growth, personal development, and overall wellness with your host, Olivia Catania. Diving into the realms of all things health, conscious living, mental expansion, and much more, this podcast is designed to help you evolve into your best self and live fit. Let's get into the show. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Livfiit Listens podcast. Today we're on episode 101. Welcome back to the 101 Dalmatians. Sorry, it just came to my head. I had to say it. I'm so excited for this episode. I'm feeling super lively and energetic today. The weather has really taken a turn and spring is really finally here in Utah. We're just going to ignore the fact that we did have like a mini snowstorm like a couple of days ago. But today I can feel the thawing of everything. I'm hearing the birds chirping, the windows open, just really good vibes. And I'm also just really excited for today's podcast episode. This was requested. But before I get ahead of myself, I also just wanted to touch on previous episode, last week's episode with Kayla Rose. I just want to thank you guys for all the love on that episode. It really was such an exciting opportunity for me. As you guys can tell, clearly I was super stoked about it. And I just am so grateful for that opportunity. And I just still can't believe we've done officially 100 episodes of Livfiit Listens at this point. So I just wanted to extend a really big, very genuine, very loving thank you to you guys for being here, whether you're a brand new listener or a returning listener and a loyal listener, like no matter what, like I just appreciate you guys so much. This has been such just an amazing safe space for me. Honestly, like this really is my biggest passion project out of all of my platforms, and I just really love having this little safe space on the internet. And I just want you guys to know I really appreciate you guys holding space for me so openly and so lovingly. And I just really am forever grateful to you guys. And I just love having this outlet as well and being able to express myself, because I feel like if you guys are an avid listener of the podcast, you guys really understand the most of like how my brain works and what I think about. And I really, really, really hope that this podcast is one that's impactful for you guys, one that has you walking away feeling uplifted, more empowered, more with a greater sense of self, or just with inspiration really at the end of the day. So I really want to thank you guys for being here. And I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. So today's episode, as you can tell by the title, we're going to be running through my spiritual journey. And at the end, I'm going to wrap up the episode with how you guys can start yours too. So this was requested on my Instagram, which if you don't already follow me, it's just at Livfiit on Instagram. And so this was like submitted in a question box. And I just am so excited to get into this. And I feel like this also is kind of a good time for this episode because, now it's been a little bit, but Easter wasn't that far away, religious holiday. And so we're kind of in the spirit of it. And I also personally have been really setting a greater intention to connect deeper to my spirituality the past few months. And I feel like last month was the closest I felt to my spirituality again in a pretty good amount of time. So I'm just really excited to open this up to you guys. I feel like this is going to be a very big chatty episode, but I'm ready for it and I'm super excited. So another bit of housekeeping before we get into anything. I, of course, want to go through my gratitude for this episode, because if you are new, I always like to start each episode with something I'm grateful for, just to help us all remember to practice gratitude. And I hope that when I share this in the beginning of the episode, you take time as well to think of something you are grateful for today. And then I also like to end the episode with an affirmation that's usually corresponding to whatever we're talking about in the episode. And with that being said, if this is your first time listening to my podcast, hello, welcome. I'm so happy you're here. So my gratitude is I'm super thankful for the sponsors of my retreat. And I don't want to say too much. Again, I almost like leaked it in a YouTube video, but I'm so big on surprises and I want my retreat guests to be very surprised during the retreat. But all I'm going to say is I have some brands and companies sponsoring my retreat, my Bali retreat that's happening super soon. We're less than a month out now, which I guess is also a side note. I will be going to Bali here in a few weeks. So be prepared, especially if you're someone who watches the podcast on YouTube, to have a different change of scenery. We're going to be in Bali so soon. I am going to be there for a month. Super stoked for that. I feel like I'm going to be so inspired. But anyways, I'm super, super thankful for the sponsors for this retreat because I feel like it is going to be elevating the experience like no tomorrow. And it's one step closer to basically like the fullest manifestation that I'm wanting for my retreats. Like it's one step closer to really stepping into that full vision that I have for where I want to take my retreats. So anyway, let's get into the full episode. So I want to bring you guys back. This all starts back in 2019. And I think what's so beautiful about my spiritual journey, I'm basically going to take you guys like where it started from having no connection to spirit or anything like that. And then I'm going to take you guys basically up until where I am now, how I got to where I am today with my connection with my spirituality. And I guess to give anyone a debriefing, if you're like super lost with where I stand spiritually, I was born and raised. I do say born and raised very intentionally because like I was baptized. So I was born and raised Catholic. I was raised religious my whole life. I went to a private Catholic school and then I eventually transferred to a public school in 7th grade. I still went ahead to get confirmed. So that happens when you're a sophomore, I believe. So a sophomore in high school, I still went through confirmation, which if you're not religious at all, it's basically one of these 7 sacraments, which again is just kind of, I don't even know how to explain them. They're just kind of things that you go through. I almost want to say like a blessing you go to, or like an induction, if you will, like another step just to deepen your status or your relationship with the church and with religion, I guess, if you will. So I was definitely religious up until like I was 15. I never like went to church consistently though, but I identified as someone who was religious, I guess, if you will. And then I really took a step back from when I really was not connected to it at all. Again, I wasn't regularly going to church or anything like that. And then it wasn't until 2019 is kind of where this started. So then I went through my fitness journey, so that was like sophomore year of high school. I got confirmed, whatever. And then senior year is when I really dove into my fitness journey. That's when everything started. So then I was in my fitness journey for like 2-3 years, going really deep into trying to change how I look, essentially. I definitely did a podcast or a YouTube video about my fitness journey a long, long time ago. But if you're interested, you could probably find that either on my YouTube or there may be a podcast episode. I'm honestly not even sure. But the thing with my fitness journey, it came to a point where, because what's been interesting is like with fitness, there's so much self-exploration that happens within your fitness journey because there's discipline and work ethic and there's so many mindset aspects that you kind of need to dive into and dissect and all these sort of things. And so I kept going deeper and deeper and deeper into my fitness journey. And it eventually led me getting deeper and deeper into myself and my relationship with myself, which led me to meeting my spirituality, essentially, because I do think it's almost one and the same, which we'll get into. So it really is beautiful in that sense that how I got into my spiritual journey was because I basically dug as deep as I could in my fitness journey that ultimately led me to discovering the spiritual journey. And so at that point, this was in 2019, I had gained some weight. This was going into my junior year of college. So this was like my sophomore year summer, if you will, coming out of sophomore year of college. And I had gained some weight. Again, I was super invested in my fitness journey. I was like trying to go through another bulk, but I also was starting to drink in college that year. So I was drinking a ton. I wasn't like, I just put on weight for me. I was like probably 15, 20 pounds heavier than I am now. And it just was uncomfortable for me, especially because at that point in time, I'd always really heavily identified with being an athlete. Like all throughout high school, I did sports and then I got into weight training. And so that was me. Like I knew myself as just this athlete who had like a lean athletic body, and that was me. And so that was the first time in my life that I had felt really disconnected from myself. And I just almost didn't recognize myself because for the first time ever, I didn't feel like I could identify with that aspect of me of being an athlete, which looking back now, like I don't want to invalidate my feelings, but I just was essentially really hard on myself at that point. Like I still was an athlete. I just wasn't in the same way that I used to see myself. And so I was having major identity crisis, okay? We'll put it that way. And I just felt so disconnected from myself. And I had never been so unconfident in my life. And I had never been so mean to myself in my life, if I'm being honest. Like totally was lacking self-love. I was so not confident, and I just was constantly mean to myself. I was so mean to myself, and I looked at myself in the mirror. I just was so unhappy with myself. And again, that was like the first time I had felt that way in my life. And it's funny, it really essentially stemmed from me placing so much value and energy in all of my externals of how I looked, how I'm training, how I'm performing in the gym. And all of that just led me feeling so disconnected from myself, because how could something ever external lead you to closer within? So basically, the irony is doing all that work that I did from like 2017 to 2019 of me trying to kill myself in the gym to like hopefully discover some sense of self-love and self-confidence. I was honestly chipping away in the opposite direction of just trying to change my externals, which again, like I'm saying, led me so far from anything of feeling any sort of connection within myself and like actually genuinely cultivating those feelings from within, which I know now is the only way to go about that. So anyways, 2019, I was like, wow, I basically can't stand myself. I'm so mean to myself. I have no relationship with myself. And somehow I stumbled upon gratitude and practicing affirmations via some sense of YouTube video. I don't really remember the exact moment, but I just remember it was the summer after sophomore year of college. And it was some YouTube video explaining the value in them and how they can be so impactful, whatever. So I was like, okay, I was desperate at that point. I was like, I need to do something, because like I am like crying all the time because I just don't even know who I am. I hate the way I look. I don't value who I am. I have no sense of self-confidence. So I was like, whatever, I'll take a stab at it. And I've always liked journaling. Like growing up, I always had kept little diaries and things like that. So journaling didn't feel like that big of a jump for me to swing, essentially. So journaling always felt familiar. So I was like, okay, cool. Like this should be easy. Like I'll write down 3 things I'm grateful for the day and 3 affirmations. And like at that point, it was something like so basic, which there's nothing wrong with it, but that's just how I started. I was like, okay, I'm thankful that I have my parents and my family. I'm thankful that I have food, and I'm thankful that I have these pair of jeans that I like. And like my affirmations were like, I am beautiful. I am capable. I am smart. Like just like super, super basic stuff. But so that's really how it started, was just writing affirmations and trying to practice more gratitude, just being thankful for myself, for who I am, for what's in my life, just simply to try to raise my spirits, because I just was so down bad, honestly. But there was nothing really spiritual about it. Like there was no intention of me to like connect to source through those things, or there was no like higher knowing of me like tapping into divine consciousness within me through those avenues. Like there was nothing spiritual about it. It was just purely for me to try to discover some sense of self-love, confidence, and appreciation, and like just being happier from my day to day. Then in 2020, now I finished my junior year. I was about to start senior year. So it was the summer of 2020. I just came back from being abroad. And so I studied abroad spring of 2020. Again, spring semester of my junior year. And just simply because I was walking more in Europe and I just was eating better foods and stuff, whatever. I just was more absorbed. I had other things going on. I was freaking studying abroad in a whole other country. Like I was just more absorbed with other things. So I wasn't so hyper focused on how I looked in the gym and the numbers I was pushing in the gym. Like I just had other things to focus on. And so I naturally had leaned out. I had lost some weight. And so I was just starting to feel better about myself because of that. And I also just started to feel better because my cortisol levels weren't freaking through the roof, because I wasn't training so hard 24/7. I wasn't stressing about all those things. So I just started to feel better overall. Come back from abroad. It's summer of 2020. Hello, lockdown. I had way more time on my hands. Obviously, I literally was just like vibing. I honestly loved lockdown because I'm from a small town in New York. And so like it really didn't impact my life that much anyways, because I liked being alone. I liked being home, and I liked being outside. And like the things I liked to do didn't involve going to public spaces. So I was vibing, and like I've always loved personal development and goal setting. So I was just like going all in on the stuff that I love of like setting goals and doing these little minutia personal development habits that like make me so fulfilled and occupied and entertained. So that was a time where I started to listen to podcasts. I feel like I'm going so in depth of all this, but like I'm enjoying this. So that's when I first started to listening to podcasts. That's when podcasts kind of started to get big. And I remember one of the first podcasts that I discovered, who I still will listen to occasionally now, it's The Mindset Mentor by Rob Dial. And I don't know, there was just like some sense of podcast of like, here's like, productive habits that successful people do or whatever. It was just simply about like, here's what successful people do. And it was that they meditate, literally. So this is how it started for me. And there was like, oh, successful people meditate 5 to 10 minutes a day. But again, it really was from the angle and from the perspective of personal development. So it was I was meditating at this time when I first started to dabble in it purely from the intention of personal development. It was purely like, oh, they say successful people do this and I want to be successful, so I'll meditate too. Like that was really as simple of the intention that it was. And for me, I had no idea what I was doing. I just simply started to, I remember I laid down like on our back deck and I just laid there and closed my eyes. Like there was no like mental exercises. There was no really intention there. Like I was just like, I'm going to close my eyes and just try to be here and like just try to focus on being really present and just like seeing what happens. So it was super innocent and I loved that it was that way. And I loved that I didn't have any pressure or preconceived ideas. And I think it's super important, which we'll get into when I talk about like the second half of how you can start your own spiritual journey now. Like I think it's so important to go in with no expectations and with no like crippling boundaries of like this is the right way to meditate or to practice spirituality or go about your spiritual journey. Like it's so subjective and individual. It's like this free flowing thing that can't always be defined. It's this infinite thing, and like each person's relationship with their spirituality and with source is going to vary, and that's the most beautiful thing about it. Like we each have our own perceptions and interpretations of things. So I think me going in blind essentially and just like going into meditation, only have hearing like a little bits and pieces of it in podcasts without having a lot of expectations was really good for me to just allow myself to like be immersed in my first meditation experiences. But the thing is I really would have downloads during that time. Like I would get ideas for Livfiit and things like that. And I remember being like, whoa, like I really just got clarity from just sitting with myself for 10 minutes with my eyes closed. So it was kind of little snippets like that. Nothing was like completely revolutionary, but I was like, whoa, like this actually works. Like I'm actually way more creative, turning my brain off, not thinking so much all the time and just like sitting in stillness. So that was like the first little snippet of meditation. It was summer of 2020 for me. That's when I first got into it. Okay. Then I moved to Utah fall of 2020. And I was really focused here on this point. Like it was a new state. I was living somewhere new. I was spending a lot of time with myself, just discovering new routines, just had this newfound independence. And also at this time, I have to add, which again seems kind of weird, or I guess not relevant, but it is relevant. And another cool way of how my fitness journey led me to my spirituality, which I love, is that at this time, I got really lean summer of 2020. And so I ended up losing my period. My hormones were all a mess as well because I was coming off of high cortisol from the previous year, all that sort of stuff. So at the time, I started to discover using meditation as a tool to help relax the body and to help with stress management and to help to decrease our cortisol. Because again, I was trying to naturally regain my cycle back. If you don't know, if this is super out of context, if you're training really hard or if your body's really stressed or if you're under eating, you will, it's common in female athletes to lose their period. So meaning you're not ovulating every month because your body is too stressed to do so. So it's really important to like decrease your stress levels by decreasing your cortisol. And that's just a way to help support having your monthly cycle and like get your period back. So at that point, I was almost using meditation as a health tool to help, again, decrease my cortisol levels. And I also was using affirmations at that time to help me get my period back. And this is when I was starting to dabble with visualizations, because then I was starting to discover how the mind can heal the body. And I think, what's the book called? It's by Deepak Chopra. I always say the name wrong, but I think it's called Heal. I'll link it down below. I can't remember now. It's a book that basically talks about how the mind can heal the body. And so I was starting to discover and learn about the mind-body connection, and I believe I started stumbling upon like really cool success stories of how people basically used meditation and their belief systems to like heal physical symptoms and illnesses that they had, which I thought was like so fascinating and like just so cool to me. So I started to discover that. And so I was using meditation and affirmations again for that scenario of that mind-body connection. but it allowed me to get deeper into meditation and affirmations at that time. I ended up getting my period back, which was cool. And almost again, this confirmation of like, wow, these things like really work, because again, that's when I started to get into visualizations during my meditations of visualizing my hormones come into balance, et cetera, like visualizing my body ovulating and having a period and all that sort of stuff, as weird as that sounds. So I started to take my meditations to like a little bit higher level of like incorporating a visualization component and like using them with an intention or like for some sense of purpose. Then fast forward to 2021, you guys, if you're still with me on this story, like this is where it, like 2021 is where it went crazy. Like this was my spiritual awakening. And I just got chills when I said it. Like summer of 2021 was freaking magic. Like it was magic. I keep having chills right now because it just was such a powerful time of my life, like so transformative. I had so many turning points that summer. It was insane. Like not only with my spirituality, with my sense of self, with my belief systems, with this like newfound confidence. Like I truly felt like I stepped into a whole new version of me, but also in my career. Like that's when Livfiit actually became something. Like I actually grew any sort of substantial audience. Like I started making money purely online this year. I had graduated college, and it's crazy because I just started learning about, I've always known about numerology, but I recently listened to a podcast by the Manifestation Babe, but she had a guest on, I forget her name. But it was about like just deeper into numerology and how we each all have our certain life path number, which is kind of similar to your zodiac in the sense of like, how in astrology, like you have your own, almost like a predestined kind of path that you have this tendency to align with during your time on earth. That's kind of what like numerology, your life path number explains. I'm a life path 6 in case everyone's is into that. And I think it makes so much sense to me. But anyways, in this podcast, I learned further that we each have a personal year number, it's called. And so basically like it's based on the theory that like, it's from cycles 1 through 9. So you can either be in a year 1, 2, 3, all the way up to year 9. And each year kind of has different corresponding themes to the year to the number of each year. And then once you hit year 9, like the cycle completes and you start the cycle again back at year 1. So it's like in that theory that our souls are going through this like cyclic evolution during this time on earth. And so looking back, because before this episode, I was like, wait, I want to see what year number I'm in. And that was a year 1 for me, which essentially is all about like new beginnings, innovations, like you're starting new projects that are likely going to last the whole 9-year cycle. Just like a lot of like newness. You're like, it's just like a really exciting year to be in, numeric year to be in. And I feel like it really aligns because there was so much newness, like I'm saying, for me in 2021, my year 1. So anyways, I think it was so powerful because there's a lot of things. One, I really met someone during this time who was really into meditation, and I don't even think he knows it, but like that was so insightful to hear like what he had to say about meditation and like his meditation experiences that really inspired me and opened my eyes up to what really is possible in meditation by allowing myself to go deeper. And so that was a summer where I actually experimented with like 30-40 minute meditations and like, whoa, like how much your mind actually opens up, like if you just go deeper and allow yourself and create space to go deeper. And I also was it wasn't a relationship, a connection that was very magnetic. And again, in almost an unexplainable way, but that person was so triggering for me in the sense of like triggering my spirituality. I think again, because I learned so much from them and they're a very spiritual person. And so it just like lit up my world to like what's possible. And I just feel like looking back, it's almost as if like I had all these doors like bust open in my mind and soul of like, whoa, like there's a lot more here than what meets the eye. So that person was a big influence on me based on what I learned from them, but also just like energetically, I almost just feel like it like initiated something in me, that like connection, because the energy was so insane. And then also I did shrooms for the first time that summer, super like not intentionally. It was one of those things that was like divine timing. The experience found me, still to this day, like one of the most perfect nights of my life. So expansive, just so like enchanting. Like again, it just felt so magical. And I'm not here trying to like advocate for drug use, but I just like, or psychedelic use, but those are just all things that I think that really went into it, of just like kind of this perfect storm in a really good way of contributing to my spiritual awakening. Of course, I also think it was just like on my own soul's evolution's timeline and everything, but I do think those were some really powerful points in that year for me that really just helped to facilitate and stimulate this awakening for me. And from there, that's just like where everything snowballed. Like I don't even have a clear timeline after that point, because that's when I just feel like everything snowballed together, of like learning more about energetics and chakras and angel numbers and master numbers and going deeper into visualization. And there just was a lot that I learned after that 2021 like spark for me. But if I had to choose like one pinpoint of like when did everything blow up, like it was summer 2021 for me. And I find it so fascinating that when I went through that really deep spiritual awakening of like having a greater sense of self, having more clarity with my connection with source, like also is when my career took off. Like I just felt so grounded and centered and clear on like who I was, what I had to say, what my truth was, like what my soul expression was, like really stemmed from that point in time. So that's kind of like my spiritual journey. Cause again, I don't feel like anything like super pivotal as like mainly happened since that point. I feel like that was my like tipping point for me. And so yeah, everything kind of snowballed from there. So I did next want to kind of speak about what I believe, like what my beliefs are. And before we get into this, like obviously this is purely my own opinion, my own personal experience. I kind of disclaimed in the beginning of the episode, like this is not, I'm not speaking like full entirely truth of fact or fiction. Like I'm just sharing my own opinion. I think again, everyone's relationship with source and their own spirituality or their religion, whatever they identify with, is so personal to them. I'm not trying to like persuade any of you guys. I want you guys all to stand tall in your own truth, in your own belief. I just want to share what my truth is at the moment, even though it does tend to shift, and what I feel is my truth at this time. So like I said, I did grow up Catholic, but I feel like I don't want to say I don't believe in God, because it's not, I do 100% through and through believe in a higher power. I just personally don't feel this call to paint a picture of like this man in the sky when I think of God. And I think that's why I didn't use the word God for a long time, or the term, because I felt like it really narrowed the box down due to the association with the word that I learned growing up for so long. But I personally feel like source, like this higher power, is such an infinite thing, and to try to confine it to this finite humanly figure of a man, like I don't think it does it justice. Like for me, when I use the term God, I use it more so as like a segue to basically just kind of symbolize and be a symbol for this greater power that is so hard to actually fathom and capture its like divine intelligence and true potent, essence in just one word, So I personally believe in energetics, and the interconnectedness of all things is how I best explain my spirituality. And I think a really good example of this is, this really just hit me the other day because I saw something on Instagram that then led me to have this big thought. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect way to describe my spirituality. Because before I was kind of describing how I see the universe as this like synergistic flow, as like similar to the ocean, how like there's these tides that are happening that are then inevitably impacting other things. And it's kind of like this unison of divine timing. But then I was like, no, the best way to describe this is just how traffic works. Like if you were to look at a bird's eye view of traffic, we have red lights, green lights, yellow lights, and how everything has to work together in order for the traffic to be in flow. And like if there's a jam up in the traffic, like then it's going to be delaying this other person who's trying to take a left-hand turn. It's like, that's what I mean, where I feel like everything is perfectly interconnected. So if like translating this to real life, if someone feels like they're having a roadblock in their own life, or their manifestation is getting delayed, or they haven't met the love of their life yet and who they're going to marry and have kids with, like I don't necessarily think that like there's this man saying like, no, hold, it's not your time. I don't like not believe it, but I just feel like it's more so like there's a traffic jam somewhere else in the traffic that's like delaying this coming into fruition for this one person, if that makes sense. Like, I just personally believe that in the interconnectedness of all things, that like the universe to me is this like synergistic flow that's in unison, that we're all getting impacted by, kind of similar to like if we're all sitting in the ocean, there's different tides and currents and all this sort of stuff. It's like not this one separate entity. It's like this thing that is almost everywhere, if that makes sense. It's this interconnected thing, and we are also a part of it, because I believe that we are also an extension of the universe because we are simply a part of it. So meaning we came from it. So I hope that kind of makes sense, but I feel like the traffic light example is also really fitting because again, with those red lights and yellow lights, like it really speaks on behalf of when we feel like we're blocked in certain things in life, or when we feel like the timing just isn't right on things. It's like, oh, it's just because we're at like a red light or a yellow light in life. But yeah, I just believe in this like beautiful flow that's happening in unison with all things. And I personally just don't agree with a lot of the contradicting structures that's in religion. And I think a lot of it is man-made pollution into the religion that I don't necessarily think is like the very core of the essence of what religion is. And I also think that all different religions are kind of saying the same thing, just in different ways. And like the underlying, common denominator of it all is what the truth is, if that makes sense. And I almost feel like, this could definitely be a super hot topic. I'm not trying to offend anyone at all. And I think it's great to question your beliefs and like be around other opinions. But I do feel like recently, honestly, I kind of had this revelation, like sometimes with the religions, I feel like we focus so much on these prophets or these disciples or these people who are delivering the message. And we think like they're the center of said religion. And like, that's who we should be worshiping and studying their life. But it's like, I don't personally believe that it's about the person that was delivering these messages. I believe it's what their message was about and like where that message came from. And I think that's kind of a misconception that I feel like happens in religion. But I will say lately I have been way more called to use the term God and prayer with things, which is new for me within the past few months, like 6 months or so. So who knows where this is going to shift for me. Like, I think your spiritual journey is something that's ongoing. Like, and I think that anyone who says like, this is the right answer is losing the whole point in all of it, and there's usually tends to be a lot of room for ego in religion and in spirituality. And so I think it's really important to drop your ego when it comes to these conversations and like really allow yourself to remain open. Again, everyone's going to have totally differing opinions, but this episode is about my spiritual journey. And I don't know why I felt called to like open up on that. I think because I've been thinking about it myself more recently of like, what do I believe? Because I'm like, do I believe in God? Do I resonate with that term? And again, so I still am definitely super open to continuing to like explore this journey with myself and like what resonates with me and like based on my experiences and all that sort of stuff. But that's where I stand right now. I just feel like I picture myself working alongside and like co-creating with the universe rather than like praying to this man in the sky to like do it for me or like to give me the strength. Because I feel like when you do that, in my opinion, and I've tried that as well, like I've experimented with that, I just personally feel like I'm giving my power away, and it makes me wait for this some sort of outside something to like make me feel like I have the strength to pursue something as opposed to when I have this perception of like me working alongside the universe, co-creating, because again, I am an extension of it. We all are. I feel like that's when I take my power back and I am working in synergy with the universe and co-creating with the power of the universe, with the intelligence of the universe to hopefully come into my greatest potential that the universe was always, hoping for me to step into, if that makes sense. So that's personally how I see it. I like see myself working alongside the universe. And I feel like when you see that, like for me, that has been the best step for me to take. And I feel like that's been allowing me to step the most into my power and allowed me to really fully step into my full potential by having this mindset, because I do believe you need to help the universe help you. And so by me like having that mindset is basically what allows me to help the universe help me, if that makes sense. I also believe if you just pray and hope and wish for some sort of outside source to help you, like your options are going to be way more limited, rather than if you were to actually like step up, take aligned action that's in line with your dreams, with your desires, with your truth, with your heart, with what you're passionate about, and the universe will meet you halfway. And so I don't believe that, you don't need the universe or spirit or source, whatever you believe. I think you just need to work with the universe. Like it's you seizing opportunities. It's you creating space for quote unquote lucky chances to come in. It's like you need to step up to the plate to create the fertile soil for these things. And then it's up to the universe will then come and plant it to actually grow into something. It's kind of how I see this whole co-creation with the universe. So that was such a major rant. If you guys are still here in this podcast episode, thank you. I really appreciate you guys. Okay, so now for the second half of this episode, or the end of the episode, I wanted to speak about how you guys can start your spiritual journey yourself as well, just because I want to just help you guys take some actionable steps. And like I said, I feel like I went through a good amount of these steps recently because I've, again, been putting more intention to reconnecting with my spirituality again, because I feel like it got a little dull there for a minute, which I kind of also want to say it, like speak on that. Like, I don't want anyone to expect to be like super connected or feel like super like connected to their intuition and to source and all this sort of stuff 100% all the time. Like, I do still see it with parallels, just like you have with the gym. Like sometimes you go through lulls where you're really not feeling your lifts, where you're really not feeling motivated and inspired, and they're just not hitting the same. Like, I do think that still applies to your spiritual journey. So that's something I had to give grace with myself with recently, of like, it's okay if you're not feeling like super tapped in 24/7 for 5 years on end. Like, it's totally okay and normal to go through like slower or honestly quieter phases, is how I want to describe it, with source and with the universe. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. So first thing that I want to say, starting from like, if you're like, I need starting 0.01. Sorry if you just heard the neighbor's dog barks. I have the windows open because it's so nice out. But if you're trying to start from like 0.01, like minuscule starting point, I want you guys to start with just simply spending time alone. This really is going back to how we are all just simply extensions of the universe. Like, source is something that's within us. And I think also that's why I personally really resonate with spirituality. Because again, going back to like taking your power back, it's something that like the further you go within yourself is the closer that you will meet source, and you will meet the divine, and you will meet spirit. And I just think that's such a beautiful thing. So if you can just simply start with spending more time alone, take yourself on dates, spend more quality time with yourself, whether this is even going shopping at a mall. Like, this doesn't need to be some really mindful, like woke, whatever. Like, you can go to the mall, you can go get lunch at like a crowded restaurant if you want. You can go to the library, like whatever you want to do. Just do things alone and start to get comfortable with just spending time with yourself, because again, you'll start to just subtly feel closer to that life force that's within you. My next little tip I have, these are in no particular order, but my next tip that I have is to spend time with your thoughts. So this could be journaling, is like the biggest thing that we're all going to think of. But I want you guys just to simply start thinking about what you're thinking about. And I know that sounds like, but seriously, think about what you're thinking about. This step, I want you guys just to start to gain awareness for what you think about, like what things that you think about on the regular basis. Gain awareness for what your beliefs are. Gain awareness to how you react in certain situations. Start to gain awareness to when you feel triggered, or when something happens that like made this uncontrollable amount of emotion come up. Like, start just to gain awareness for those things of how you act. Like, all these have to do with just cultivating a greater understanding for who you are. So this is a great way to kind of hash these out is to journal. So that's a big one. My next tip, kind of piggybacking off that, is just to start to now get curious. I think this has been the biggest thing that's helped me in my spiritual journey, is just simply getting curious, like asking the questions. Like, instead of just taking something at face value, like see how you can go deeper and ask a further question to go deeper in that first answer you received. Like, now I want you to think about like where those triggers are coming from when a lot of emotion came up with this interaction. Or I want you to think about where your thought patterns came from. Or I want you to think about where you adopted these certain beliefs came from when you started spending time with your thoughts. Like, I want you to think about why you think about certain things and like where they're coming from and where they're stemming from. Like, asking those questions just allows you to go deeper. And when we go deeper, we're getting closer to the source. Pretty much as straightforward as that sounds. And I want you to get curious about the synchronicities that are in your life that we so often deem as coincidences. Like start to think about times in your life where things really felt like magic, or there wasn't really a full scientific explanation for something that you experienced, but it just happened. Like those things get muted so much because we live in a world that's so westernized and values facts and the science and the research and the data, but it's so much of life is inexplainable. So much of life is magic. Like that, I just truly believe it. Like so much of life is unexplanatory. So much of life can't be proven, and that doesn't mean that it's not real. And so really holding tight and really highlighting those synchronicities in your life goes really far just to help you feel more confident in this whole realm of spirituality. And I feel like this is a good time just to play with your spirituality as well. Like when you're getting curious, asking questions, like just get curious and play with it. And you'd be really surprised at what doors open up and like where your own curiosity can lead you. My next tip that I have is to spend time in stillness and getting present. This is really, really huge. This is also, again, probably my top ones that have been super imperative for me. I am a meditation girly. Okay, through and through, I am a meditation girly. And it's funny because this was also even in my human design. If you don't know your human design, you can look it up. Again, this is even more so similar to your zodiac sign. I'm also a Cancer in case anyone's curious, but I'm a rising Sagittarius, and my moon is also a Sagittarius. But anyways, with my human design, it even said that a lot of my clarity comes from sitting in stillness and meditation. And I'm like, yes, because I love meditation. Like no mindfulness habits hit me the way that meditation does. Like I am so much more a grounded, clearer me when I'm meditating on the regular. So spending time in stillness, whether this is literal meditation for you or laying in the park on some grass or maybe going even on like a meditative walk, this is just where you really allow the connection of the divine to come through because you're finally creating space with it. You're finally creating, not with the universe, you're creating space with your thoughts, with your anxieties, with the hustle and bustle of life to allow the divine to actually come up. Because like I'm saying, the divine, the source lies really all within us because again, we are all extensions of source. So when you actually get quiet and you get still and you listen, you can finally hear what the divine is trying to communicate to you, or you can finally even just start by feeling your life force. And to be honest, that was the first step now that I think about it with my meditations. I remember one of my first, I was getting into meditation whenever, and I was starting to take it deeper. And I had this exercise, I believe that came from The Power of Now from, it's a book. It's called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And he talks about sitting in the seat of awareness, which is like you sitting behind your thoughts, behind your ego, behind the hustle and bustle of your mind, and you're just sitting in your soul and you're sitting in your being. And I remember I tried that exercise. I believe he described it as at least I do this is how I do it now. And I believe it was in the book where you basically just want to imagine yourself like it's in your third eye. So we're looking like in between our eyeballs up on our forehead. I focus on myself in that area of my mind and just kind of like zooming back and like visualizing myself almost sitting back behind a movie theater screen. And like the screen is like depicting my thoughts and my ego and my mind and all my anxieties and overthinking, and me creating space with that and sitting behind it and like going deeper. And that's like where I am, my soul, my being is. And I remember and still to this day, it happens to me when I find that spot in meditation of finding my seat of awareness, of connecting with my true self, like go to my soul is what I think of. I get these chills that run through my body. Like I feel this jolt, almost like when you touch a pond and the ripple goes through the still water. That's what I feel like goes through me when I find that seat. And that is your life source. And I remember when I first felt that the first time and I was like, oh my gosh, that's me, aka that is source, that is the life force that runs through all of us. And it took getting present and getting still to feel that. And I feel like getting present, whether that's in meditation or you just driving and you're just really present when you're driving, you're connecting with all your senses, that is when you can really feel connected to what's going on around you. And when you are present, that's the closest you can be to source, to the divine. And so when you can get connected to what's around you, that's when you can start to feel connected with source. And I think another way to describe it, it's kind of like if you're trying to have this conversation with someone, you're trying to get to know someone and they're trying to talk to you, but you have headphones on all the time. Like, you're not going to be able to hear what they're saying. You're not going to build any sort of connection with them. And it's the same thing for when you're not present and you're constantly living in your mind. You're letting your thoughts run wild. You're living in your ego. You're thinking about so many different things. You're not even in the here and now. The universe is like, hello, hi, I'm trying to talk to you, but you're ignoring me because you're so focused on your all other thoughts and on your to-do list and what so-and-so said to you and all this sort of stuff. So getting present allows you to take the headphones off and like just be with the universe and allow yourself to connect with it. I could go on and on, but I'm going to move on. The next one that I have is to spend time with the universe, just like a friend that you want to develop a relationship with. You need to picture the universe as a friend because it is. I picture it as this like support system. And so if you're not dedicating any time to cultivating that relationship, obviously you're not going to feel very close to the universe, or in the example, you're not going to feel close to the friend that you don't spend any time with. So you getting present with yourself and spending time with yourself and spending time with the universe, you're going to be more present with source. And so for me, that has been meditation. This has been a big one lately because I felt disconnected with my spirituality over the past like 6 months or so. And so meditation was a big thing for me recently in the sense of like, I just needed to go spend more time with the universe. Like I needed to take time out of my day to spend time with the universe because there's so many truths that I know that I've learned from my spiritual journey that I still believe through and through, but I still just didn't feel that like that hug that I normally feel from the universe on the day to day. And it came down to me just not spending time with the universe anymore as much as I did. So just whether this is meditation for you, which it is for me, that's when I feel closest to source, of just like going and spending time and sitting with the universe for 5, 10, 15 minutes to start my day. It's transformative for me. Maybe for you, it's going into nature. Maybe it's listening to meditation with music. Maybe it's you connecting with art, doing something that makes you feel close to the universe, that makes you feel like you're spending time with divine intelligence goes a really, really, really long way. And that's been something I've been prioritizing. Next thing, my voice is like starting to get hoarse because I've been talking for so long. Next one is practicing gratitude. I feel like this one was almost got so overrated that now it's like almost become forgotten because it seems so basic that people just brush over it, but it's so imperative. Practicing gratitude and appreciating your present moment for all that you have and even for all that you don't have yet. Like it allows you to see how divine everything really truly is and how perfectly orchestrated everything is. Like if you just think about how in depth the process of our body is, like once you realize that and like how perfect the seasons are and how like a tree's life cycle is, like so many different things, you're like, there's no way that this all can't, there's no way that this is an accident. Like it becomes so obvious that none of this is an accident, and it makes you really feel like there is this divine intelligence behind all of this when you appreciate all the beauty that's around us and intentionality that's around us. And it also makes you feel like source really is supporting you because you realize how much of source's creation is all around you. So practicing gratitude and appreciation is freaking huge. Another thing I have is to ask, pray, ask for signs, like conversate with the universe and however way, like whatever way resonates with you. I know prayer could be like a strong word for people, but like just conversing with the universe. It could be as little as just like talking out loud about your day and imagine yourself speaking to a friend. It could be you asking for help from the universe. It could be you asking to say, hey, like I'm really struggling with this decision. Like please help make the path obvious for me, or please allow me to hear my intuition of what to do next, or please allow me to tap into my intuition to see what my next best path is. Like anything, how small that you want to start with, whatever you resonate with, just conversate with the universe is really adds another dimension to your relationship with your spirituality. And it also makes a lot of it feel a lot more real. I feel like it's the same reason why when you have all these thoughts, but then when you journal about them, when you get them on paper, it almost bringing them to life, just almost like, how do I want to explain it? When you bring it to life like that, it almost validates, I guess, what you're trying to express. And then my last tip, which again, really not trying to condone psychedelics on here, but if you want to sit with psychedelics, go for it. I really don't believe that my shrooms trip was something that like is the sole reason why I went on this spiritual journey. I really don't, because it was something that was happening before that. I just feel like it came in at the perfect time in my life to heighten what I was experiencing. But if you would like to experiment with something like shrooms or something that, if that's something that feels, good to you, if you're resonating, if you're curious about it and the moment feels right, of course, do it safely, start slow. But I do think it is something that can also open your mind in certain ways to things that may give you clarity with just certain curiosities that you may be having or questions. So I feel like I've been talking forever. My voice is like so raspy right now. I don't know if I sound like it, but I can like feel it in my throat. For my affirmation to correspond with this episode, I am open and receptive to the stream of consciousness within. I am open and receptive to the stream of consciousness within. Again, that's going back to the fact that source all lies within us, this divine intelligence, this unexplainable just like knowing that comes with God and source in the universe. Like all of that is within us because we are simply just an extension of it. So as soon as you are ready and open and receptive to tapping in to that stream of consciousness within, like you will be able to receive it. You just need to open yourself up to it. And I promise, like, it's kind of crazy how just more like ideas, more clarity, how much louder your intuition comes through when you stay tapped into that consciousness that's within all of us. And full transparency, when I'm really struggling with my creativity or next steps in my career, or what do I feel like my collective audiences need to hear from me, like what content do they need, I will do my best to try to tap into that stream of consciousness within. I'll try to tap into that light source within me because I almost see that as like just like the mecca of that divine intelligence that again is all within us. So I really hope you guys appreciate this podcast episode. I feel like I opened up so many cans of worms, I could go deeper on so many different topics. Like this is a conversation that I could go on and on about, but I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I do want to say that next episode, I want to do a Q&A. It should have been this episode, but I forgot and I didn't get questions in time. So what I'm going to do is if you're listening on Spotify or on YouTube, you can just comment on the YouTube video. I want you guys to send in any questions that you guys have in the Q&A. It could be about anything. It doesn't have to be about spirituality. It could be about literally anything, any life advice that you need. Next episode is going to be an advice Q&A section. So again, if you are listening on Spotify, if you scroll down, there's like a Q&A portion, an opportunity for you to send in a question. I'll have all the questions be private. None of them will be published. They'll all be anonymous. And then I will answer some of them in next week's podcast episode. And also while you're there, I would really love if you could leave either a rating or a review for this podcast episode. It is the best way to support this podcast. That's completely free to you. All you have to do is click the little 3 buttons. Well, actually, if you're on Apple Podcasts, I believe it's when you scroll down at the bottom, you can click however many stars or click write a review. But if you're on Spotify, if you go to the top of the show page, there's 3 little dots. You can click it and then it'll hit rate show. Click that and then you just tap whatever stars you want. It literally takes 2 seconds. You don't need to write anything. And it'll just leave a little rating for the show that goes a really long way. We recently hit 500 reviews on Spotify, which is super exciting. So I want to thank you guys if you did already leave a review. But that's it, you guys. I'm sending you guys so much love. Thank you guys so much for your time and being with me if you made it to this part of the episode. I love you guys so much, and hopefully I'll see you in the next epi. Peace out.